The train station was loud, but her world was unbearably quiet. People hurried past in blurred shapes, suits brushing against coats, luggage wheels clattering against the tiled floor, announcements crackling above. She stood still near platform 9, fingers clutching a small leather suitcase that had been mended twice, the handle worn smooth by years of use. A red scarf trailed loosely around her neck, whipping gently in the cold February air each time the doors opened to let another wave of passengers inside. Her eyes were fixed, not on the trains, not on the bustling crowd, but on a single figure by the vending machines. He was laughing at something a woman beside him had said, head tilted, shoulders relaxed in a way she remembered far too well. The sound didn't reach her over the noise, but she didn't need it to. She knew the curve of that smile as if it had been carved into her. Her hands shook. Not from cold, but from something older, something heavier. A gust of wind slipped through the station, brushing strands of hair across her eyes. She didn't move them aside. She wanted the blur. Don't come here. Don't look at me. The woman beside him reached into her bag, pulling out a bottle of water. For a brief second, he glanced around the station as if scanning for someone. His gaze didn't find her. It slid past. She exhaled slowly, her breath clouding in the cold air. 3 years ago, this same man had stood in a hospital corridor, hands in his pockets, telling her without looking at her that he couldn't do this anymore. She had been wearing this same red scarf then, its threads frayed even back then. The scarf smelled of antiseptic and rain for months after. Her thumb brushed the edge of the cracked watch strapped to her wrist, a watch that had stopped ticking the day she walked out of that hospital alone. She had never fixed it. Some things weren't meant to be restarted. A train roared into the station, flooding the platform with noise and metallic breath. She stepped back toward a pillar, letting the crowd swallow her. Somewhere deep in her coat pocket, her phone buzzed, 3 short vibrations. A reminder. Tonight, 8 p.m. Live. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the train drown out everything else. Then she opened them again, gaze sliding once more to the man who had once looked at her like she was everything. He still hadn't seen her. But he would. Soon. The train screamed into the distance, leaving behind a curl of steam that faded into the gray February sky. She remained by the pillar, suitcase still in her hand, scarf fluttering against her coat like a restless heartbeat. Her gaze lingered where he had been. The vending machines, the laughter, it was all gone now. Only the crowd remained, spilling into the cold evening like ants from a broken trail. A sharp whistle of wind made her tighten her grip on the suitcase. Her father's voice came back to her, uninvited. You keep what you can carry, and you carry what you can survive without. She had been 12, standing in the backyard, rain soaking her sweater. Her father had pressed this very suitcase into her hands, not because she needed it, but because it was his way of saying one day, you'll leave, and you'll need to know what matters. At the time, she thought he meant travel. Years later, in a dim hospital room, she understood he had meant escape. The cracked watch on her wrist caught the light from the platform lamps. She remembered the night it broke, dropping it on the bathroom floor after reading his last text. I'm sorry. I can't handle this. The second hand had stopped in that instant. She hadn't thrown it away. She had worn it every day since, like a reminder of the hour her old life ended. A child ran past her now, nearly tripping over her suitcase. His mother swooped down, pulling him close, scolding gently. The girl's throat tightened. Everywhere around her, people were reuniting, hands grasping, smiles breaking through tears, voices calling names. No one was here for her. She adjusted her scarf, eyes drawn to the far end of the platform where a tall stranger stood against the railing. He wasn't rushing for a train. He wasn't waiting for anyone. He was looking at her. His coat collar was turned up, shadowing most of his face, but his gaze was steady, unmoving. The kind of look that wasn't casual, wasn't accidental. She felt it in her chest, an awareness, a question, a warning. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She didn't check it. She only stepped toward the exit, suitcase wheels rattling over uneven tiles. Halfway across the concourse, she stopped. Something made her glance back. The stranger hadn't moved. For a beat too long, their eyes held across the crowd. Then he lifted the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, not quite nothing. She hesitated, her hand tightening on the suitcase handle. Somewhere, an announcement echoed through the station, last call for the 7:42 departure. The stranger didn't look away. And for reasons she couldn't name, neither did she. The station lights flickered once, briefly dimming as the wind howled through the open platforms. Somewhere outside, the first low rumble of thunder rolled over the city. She hadn't moved from the concourse. The stranger was still there, a dark silhouette framed by cold light. He stepped forward now, slowly, as if unsure whether to approach. For a moment, she thought he would walk straight past her. But when he stopped by the vending machine, the same one she had seen him near earlier, her chest tightened. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a worn leather wallet. As he slid a coin into the slot, the wallet fell open just enough for her to glimpse a small, faded photograph tucked behind a cracked plastic sleeve. A young woman. Dark hair. Smiling. It wasn't her. His shoes caught her attention, scuffed leather, the kind that had once been expensive but now carried years of streets and rain. The soles were starting to peel at the edges. For reasons she couldn't explain, she felt her grip on the suitcase loosen. Something in him, the quiet edges, the way he seemed to stand apart from the crowd, mirrored a part of herself she didn't like to look at. Rain began to fall outside, tapping against the glass roof. Drops rolled down in uneven trails, distorting the blurred lights of the city beyond. It was the same kind of rain that had followed her out of the hospital 3 years ago. The same cold weight pressing on her shoulders. She should leave. The car service she had booked would be waiting. She had a live interview tonight, a perfectly orchestrated step in her carefully built new life. A life that had no room for strangers with unreadable eyes and scuffed shoes. But her feet stayed planted. The stranger took the bottled drink from the vending machine but didn't open it. He looked up, scanning the station once more. His gaze landed on her and held. For a beat too long, the noise of the station faded. In her head, questions bloomed like dark flowers. Does he know me? Does he need something from me? Or is this nothing, just the way two lost people recognize each other without speaking? A second roll of thunder rattled the glass above. Her scarf lifted slightly in the draft, brushing her cheek. She stepped toward the exit at last, suitcase wheels trembling over the floor. But halfway to the doors, she paused again, heart thudding in her throat. Behind her, she heard the faint, deliberate sound of footsteps following. She didn't turn. Not yet. The rain was heavier now, striking the station roof like restless fingers. The crowd had thinned to stragglers, late commuters, cleaners sweeping wet footprints into gray puddles. She kept her pace steady toward the exit, each step rehearsed, measured. But then, as she passed the row of benches, something made her stop. The cracked watch on her wrist caught a flicker of light, pulling her eyes to the reflection in the glass doors ahead. He was behind her. Closer than before. She turned, slowly. He stood beneath a dim overhead lamp, his coat damp at the shoulders, droplets clinging to his hair. In his hand, not the drink he'd bought earlier, but her scarf. Not the one around her neck. Her other red scarf. The one she'd lost years ago. The one she thought she'd left on that hospital chair the day he walked away. Her breath caught. He didn't move toward her. He only held it out slightly, as though the weight of it was heavier than cloth. A cleaner passed between them, glancing from him to her, then shaking his head almost imperceptibly. The kind of quiet judgment strangers save for moments they think are obvious. She took one step forward, then another, her suitcase rolling behind her. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. The rain's rhythm slowed in her ears, replaced by the thud of her heartbeat. She stopped a meter away, eyes fixed on the scarf in his hand. "You kept it?" Her voice came out quieter than she expected. He looked at the scarf, then at her. "It wasn't mine to throw away." A woman waiting nearby for the last train glanced up from her phone, curiosity in her eyes, as though sensing the weight in the air between them. She reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the scarf, and felt the dampness from the rain, or perhaps from his grip. Memories threatened to break through, the hospital corridor, the smell of antiseptic, his retreating back. She could almost feel the chair under her as she'd sat there, staring at the scarf she couldn't bring herself to pick up. Her eyes stung, but she blinked it back. This was not the place. Not the time. And yet, she didn't pull the scarf away. Thunder rolled overhead, deep and patient, like the world was waiting for something to break. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket, loud against the silence between them. She looked at him once more, searching for something. An answer. A reason. All she found was his gaze, steady and unreadable, and the rain running down the glass behind him. She let go of the scarf. And walked away. The rain had eased by the time she reached the glass-covered taxi stand. Her scarf, the one she hadn't taken, still clung to her memory like damp air. She opened her phone to check the time. The cracked watch on her wrist had been still for years, but tonight, the motionless hands seemed heavier. Her inbox lit up with a new message from an unknown address. Subject, regarding your application. Her breath slowed. She had been chasing this opportunity for months, the kind of position that could finally cement the life she'd built from the rubble. She opened it. "We're impressed by your portfolio. Please report tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for final review with the company director." Below the signature was the company name. She stared at it until the words blurred. It was his. Not just his. He owned it. Her pulse rattled in her ears. Lightning flashed somewhere in the distance, and with it came a memory, her father's voice again, softer this time. "You keep what you can carry, and you carry what you can survive without." But this was different. This wasn't about surviving. This was about walking straight into the storm. She thought of the scarf he'd held, rainwater dripping from its frayed edge. She had assumed it was hers. But now, she remembered that day in the hospital more sharply. She had left her scarf, yes, but there had been another on the chair beside hers. Smaller. A child's. Her stomach tightened. Was it possible? A single image burned in her mind, his wallet, the faded photograph of the dark-haired girl. The scarf in his hand tonight, its threads finer, softer. Not mine to throw away. The meaning twisted in her chest until she couldn't breathe right. If the scarf belonged to his late daughter, if he had carried it all these years, then this meeting tomorrow wasn't just professional. It was something else. A reckoning. A collision she could no longer step away from. Her car pulled up, headlights washing across the wet pavement. She climbed in, fingers tightening around the suitcase handle. The driver glanced at her in the rearview. "You okay, miss?" She almost laughed. "No. But I will be." The city blurred past, neon bleeding into the rain-streaked windows. Somewhere between the station and her destination, she realized she had crossed it, the invisible line between walking away and walking straight toward him. By the time the car stopped, her decision was already made. She stepped out into the dim lobby of the television studio, scarf still damp around her neck, heart pounding. Tonight, the cameras would roll. And tomorrow, everything would change. The television studio was colder than she expected. Bright lights hung like interrogators above her, casting sharp shadows across the sleek glass table. Cameras whispered in their mechanical hum, red lights blinking. Behind the main lens, crew members moved with the quiet urgency of people who had seen 100 such interviews before, but none like this. He walked in from the far side of the stage, coat gone, suit pressed, hair still damp from the rain. His presence carried the same stillness as in the station, but here it was amplified, commanding, inescapable. Her fingers tightened on the arm of her chair. The cracked watch on her wrist pressed into her skin. The host welcomed him warmly. She heard the introduction, founder and CEO of one of the most influential companies in the country, as if from underwater. When his gaze found her, the noise of the studio faded. The interview began with polite questions. Achievements. Market strategies. Industry trends. He answered them smoothly, his voice even, betraying nothing. Then the host shifted. Tonight's surprise, he said with a knowing smile, is that you'll be joined by someone connected to your past. The camera turned to her. Her scarf felt heavier than fabric. He didn't flinch. She thought she was ready. She thought this was her moment, to stand, to tell the country what he had done, to take back the dignity he had left crumpled on that hospital chair. But then, under the hot lights, he reached into his inner pocket and pulled out the scarf. Not hers, the smaller one. Faded, frayed, carrying the ghost of another life. He set it gently on the table between them, the gesture quiet but magnetic. This belonged to my daughter, he said, his voice steady, but something fractured beneath it. The day I left. I left more than I meant to. She died 6 months later. I kept this because it was the last thing she wore. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the lights. I didn't come tonight to defend myself, he continued. I came because, when I saw you, he paused, searching for the words. You reminded me of her. Not in face. In fight. It wasn't love. It wasn't even apology. It was recognition. She realized then that revenge would taste hollow here. That the win she had imagined would not come in breaking him, but in walking away intact. Slowly, she slid the cracked watch from her wrist and placed it beside the scarf. This was the moment my life stopped, she said softly. You can keep it. I don't need it anymore. For the first time all night, his eyes wavered. The cameras caught everything. She stood, her chair scraping lightly against the floor, and walked off set without looking back. Outside, the night air smelled of rain and static. She breathed it in like something new. Not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever. The rain had stopped by the time she reached the empty street. Puddles clung to the edges of the pavement, reflecting the pale glow of street lamps. Her footsteps were slow but unhesitating, suitcase rolling softly behind her. Somewhere in the city, the interview replayed on late-night television screens, strangers watching, judging, debating. She didn't care. She crossed the bridge that arched over the train tracks. Below, the rails gleamed in the moonlight, stretching into darkness like veins carrying something away. She paused halfway across, leaning on the cold railing, letting the silence settle. Her fingers traced the bare skin of her wrist where the cracked watch had been. It felt lighter now, not the lightness of loss, but the lightness of release. In her bag, she carried only the small leather suitcase, as always. At the top, neatly folded, was the scarf she had worn to the studio. Not the one he had given her. That scarf, his daughter's, was gone now, left under the glare of television lights, exactly where it belonged. She thought of his eyes when she had left him there, the way they hadn't asked her to stay, the way they hadn't looked away either. A whisper of her father's voice came back to her, softer now, no longer an instruction but a truth. You keep what you can carry, and you carry what you can survive without. Tonight, she realized, she could carry less. By the time she reached her apartment, the streets were nearly empty. Inside, she set the suitcase by the wall and walked to the small wooden desk near the window. She opened the top drawer. Inside was a folded note she had written years ago and never sent. A photograph of herself before the illness. And now, the red scarf, her own, worn and frayed but still warm. She placed it inside, closing the drawer with a quiet click. Standing by the window, she looked out at the city's sleeping lights. The reflection in the glass showed a woman who had once been broken, now standing upright, not unscarred, but unshaken. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a sigh. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition, she murmured into the stillness. She didn't know if she would see him again. She didn't know if she wanted to. That, she decided, wasn't the point. The point was that she had walked in carrying years of weight. And she had walked out lighter. Outside, a train horn echoed faintly in the night. She listened to it fade until there was only silence. And in that silence, she understood, not all endings are meant to close. Some are meant to stay open, so we can keep walking.